I would like to welcome all of you to Trinity Episcopal School's webinar today. My name is Jennifer Morgan, and I'm the head of the lower school at Trinity. The topic of today's webinar is the strategy behind social emotional learning, and it's being led by our two school counselors, Jennifer Dugan, the lower school counselor, and Courtney Childers, our middle school counselor. Before we get started, I do want to remind everyone of just a few housekeeping details. First, we are recording this webinar, and you'll have access to the audio later by virtue of a link that we will email you. And second, due to the number of people on the call, we do have everyone muted. So if you have a question along the way, just type it in the chat box, and we'll save time at the end to get your questions answered. So on that note, if you don't mind one more time using your chat box and letting us know that you can see and hear us. We'll give that just a second. Great, it seems that everything is working. So all right, I think we're ready to turn it over to Jennifer and Courtney, and you guys can get started whenever you're ready.
Thank you for such a nice introduction, Jennifer. Yes. Good afternoon. We are so delighted to welcome everyone here this afternoon into this conversation. My name is Jennifer Dugan, and I am the lower school counselor at Trinity Episcopal School, kindergarten through 4th grade.
And I'm Courtney Childers, and I am our middle school counselor, and I work with students in grades 5 through 8.
Together, we partner with our faculty and staff to care for the social and emotional needs of our community.
Jennifer, I think it'd be important for us to start off today by sharing our goal for our conversation with you all. And that's really for us as parents to gain a better understanding of the importance of social and emotional learning so that we can build these skills in our kids at home. And what Jennifer and I really hope for our time together today is that you all walk away with information that you can put to work for you on an everyday basis with your children at home.
Yeah, that's right, Courtney. I want to start us with a little history and background so we can contextualize our conversation. We are going to spend some time this morning talking about what we have come to know in schools as social and emotional learning, or we sometimes abbreviate that to SEL. But it really started, the emergence of this started with emotional intelligence and the research behind that. So back in the 90s, you may remember a very popular book that was titled Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. And it became the buzzword EQ back then. And since then, our knowledge of neurobiology and brain research has really boomed and brought us much more information about a better everyday sense of how this emotional intelligence plays out and how, in fact, we build that out in ourselves and our young children. And even before that book, Courtney, the social scientists Peter Salovey and John Mayer really need to have credit for coining the term emotional intelligence. And the definition's up on our screen, but it reads, a form of social intelligence that involves the ability to monitor one's own and others' feelings and emotions, to discriminate among them, and then to use this information to guide one's thinking and action.
You know, Jennifer, I loved you brought up the field of neuroscience. That's exactly where all of this has originated. And through that, we've really seen this explosion of research and information that we and our colleagues have really benefited from as educators. And what we know now is that kids learn when their emotions are engaged. So science is really backing up what good teachers have always known, and that's that emotions matter. And teachers are really tuning in to those emotions and trying to harness them to the benefit of our students in a classroom setting. You know, you may have heard the phrase, check your emotions at the door. Well, what we know now is that that phrase, at least in the school setting, is not really best practice, and nor is it really accurate. And instead, there's another quote that will be popping up on your screen. Educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. And that's really what we believe now, and that's kind of what's at the underpinning of our conversation for today and the importance of SEL skills.
And really at the forefront of our minds day to day with kids. You know, when you think about it, Courtney, from the moment we wake up until we fall asleep at night, we experience different emotions all day long. Some are pleasant and some are a little bit more unpleasant. You can see this in the boom of the emojis we now have.
Right.
And what we know is that if we can identify those feelings, we're on our way to be able to understand them, to be able to manage them, and to be able to have them work for us in order to have good decisions at work and at school, to be able to have healthy relationships and social interactions. It really is probably the most influential factor in our well-being and health, and there's a lot of research to back this up these days. However, even though we know we're all hardwired for this, we really have to teach them. We have to learn these skills.
That's right, and that's why I think SEL teaching in schools is so very important and critical. And I'm actually reminded of a title of a book that I came across recently that I found really interesting. And it's referring just to this very thing we're discussing. The title of the book was The Other Side of the Report Card. And what that's referring to is the idea that SEL skills are often relegated to the backside of a report card, when things like a child's academic performance or their behaviors during the day are really given priority and are seen there on the front side of the report card.
Yeah.
When what we know is that these SEL skills are actually equally as important.
For sure. So it seems fitting that we sketch out some of these social and emotional competencies so that we can look at how do you build those out in young children and in ourselves. Courtney, rest assured, it's not too late for us as well as adults to learn these things. We know
reassuring
that our brains are wired to learn and relearn this too, so that we have neurons that can fire and refire. It just takes some practice. So what better way as parents to be able to practice that alongside with our kids?
Right.
We know that when teachers and parents are emotionally attuned and they have those skills, they are much more effective and they're much more empathetic as parents. So again, a little bit of context. What followed Goldman's EQ popularity was a group of researchers, advocates, educators alike. All were interested in using this social science research to put it into place in the education field and in schools, really so that we could look at how do you build this in healthy development of children. And they came to form what is known as the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, or what we abbreviate to CASEL, which remains the most influential entity in this field and offers a helpful set of competencies to frame these conversations as well as the research to back it up. So as social and emotional educators, this framework works in everything that Courtney and I do day to day. There's lots of evidence and research to back up the benefits of SEL, so that now it's a well-established practice in schools, and actually not only an add-on, but really central to the way that we want kids to learn day to day. So you'll see that on the screen the model, and it really lays out 5 competencies, which are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and then finally decision-making skills. We thought we'd talk about these one by one, define them first, and then share a few examples.
Jennifer, I think that sounds great. Let's get to it.
Okay, well, it starts with knowing oneself, or what we know as self-awareness in these competency wheel. It really is the ability to recognize our feelings and thoughts and then connect them to how we influence our behavior. So it directly speaks, Courtney, to the way we feel about ourselves, right? This gets at our self-confidence, our sense of optimism in the world. It's really key to be able to know ourselves emotionally in different settings, to have that resiliency that we want to see kids have, to be able to bounce back from a hard moment or a struggle. It really starts with what we talked about earlier. We need to name our feelings in order to build that comfort and understanding that we all do have those feelings, and that we know you need to name it to tame it. And so the more self-aware one is, the more resilient you can become. So with the young children, we need to provide those mirrors for knowing self. And that happens through exploration and play, which is the most important work of young kids. Children need stories that reflect their own experiences as well as the experience of others, which we now refer to as windows. So having both mirrors and windows grows not only a healthy sense of self, but really primes us to be able to be attuned to others, friends, identities, and cultures. I spent a lot of time in the kindergarten wing,
Yes,
and I see this emerging sense of self-awareness in everything they do. So this is mastering going down the slide at recess to sharing family traditions and social studies with pride. I often hear in the hallway proud echoes of, I did it, or look what I did. And they can be heard regularly.
So rewarding.
It is. And that is what's building out that self-awareness. So we as adults, both teachers and parents, are those mirrors for them learning those emotions. And the more we stretch out that emotion vocabulary in these younger years, the more they can experience the wider range of emotions. You know, we often focus on happy and sad, but if we start to talk about more complex ones like disappointment or elation, or even how they deal with shame, it goes a long way in acceptance of the full range of our feelings and moods. And we don't have to feel embarrassed or shameful of our feelings.
You know, Jennifer, the way I see self-awareness playing out in middle school where I work, again, this is Courtney, is the middle school counselor. And as you know, any of you out there who have adolescents, self-awareness really takes on increased importance at this age as kids become more aware of what they think about themselves and, of course, what others think about them. But really, it's of no fault of their own. This is developmentally what they're really going through. They're grappling with their own identity and trying to figure out who they are and really trying to answer the question of who am I? It's really an important time for a student and a child to begin to explore and really get to solidify their own identity. And in fact, we've done an activity in the sixth grade advisory program to this end, where we've given students an opportunity to really dive into the three main words that they think really define them at this point in their lives. You'll see a picture of this wall here up on your screen. It's really an opportunity for our students to get to, again, focus on what sets them apart, what distinguishes them as individuals. And what we're hoping that leads to is some sense of security that they feel in themselves as they're emerging as adults. And one thing I particularly like about this is it's an opportunity for us as a community to celebrate who our students are, both as individuals and who we are, again, as a community as a whole together.
I love that activity. It really speaks to me about how when they're little, they're really learning about themselves through the reflections or the mirroring back of adults. By the time they get to middle school, they're again revisiting identity, but in a different way. They're really trying on different identities and trying on what those mean to them. So that's a great exercise to mine for that.
Yes.
Jennifer and Courtney, before you move into your next competency, I just want to remind our audience that we will be taking questions at the end. So if you have a question along the way, feel free to type it in our chat box, and then we'll save a few minutes before we conclude. Okay?
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jennifer. Okay, so with that, how about we move on to our next competency? Okay, this is the second one as laid out by Castle, and it is defined as self-management, which you see there on the screen. Self-management is defined as the ability to successfully regulate one's emotions, one's thoughts, and behaviors in different situations. And this includes things like effectively managing stress, controlling impulses, and motivating oneself. So that's a whole lot. And Jennifer, we know emotions show up, but the question is, what do we do about them? And what do we do with them?
That's right. And sometimes it's not as easy as we think. I will tell you, Courtney, that in the last few years, nothing has had greater influence on me personally as a parent and as a counselor in this department than the practice of mindfulness, which can mean different things to different people. There are some people that have had meditation as part of their life for years, or others who are trying on mindfulness by integrating a few deep breaths day to day. But for simplicity's sake for today, mindfulness is really about being present in the moment and taking in what's around you. And what we know about this is when we do get centered and quiet and have breath working for us, we can develop a sense of calm and steady, and that it frees us up to be able to take in more information in the present moment. So how it connects to SEL is it offers a skill or strategy, if you will, for creating a pause between something that's happened, maybe a difficult moment or an anxious moment where we're worrying about something that might be happening in the future, and how we're going to respond. Mindfulness can bring us back to the present moment so that we can be in whatever we're engaging in that current moment. So I teach mindfulness to all the students I can engage in that are willing to sit still for a couple of moments. We did practice a year-long pilot program for first graders where we taught mindfulness in a very deliberate and intentional way. And at first, we all wondered, oh, can young kids sit still long enough to teach intentionally into this? But in fact, they did, and they loved it, and they grew to appreciate the benefits. And now we have teachers who are integrating those practices in day to day throughout their weeks and finding that they're reaping all the benefits from that. There's plenty of research out there on the benefits of mindfulness. Perhaps you out there in the audience are practicing it yourself or know of this research. But what we know is if you practice it daily, it will be a reliable friend to you when you get angry or you get frustrated, or when your kiddo is struggling to get out the door on time for school. Well,
I've been there.
Yeah, we've all been there. We've all been there. We're not perfect as parents, and we have moments of stress, and we have moments where our kids aren't doing things exactly the way that we hope they'll do them.
Yeah, true.
But mindfulness can get us to a place of being centered so that we have the calm, that we are able to co-regulate with them and get them back on track. I now wake up in the mornings before my family, Courtney, and practice mindfulness, even if it's just for a couple minutes, and it has really changed my morning. I would highly recommend any and all parents and families to sprinkle mindful moments throughout your day.
Thanks, Jennifer. I love that you shared that and about the importance of taking a breath. There are a few other aspects of the self-management competency, that I'd love to hit on, and those are both impulse control and the idea of stress management. And you all may be familiar, Jennifer, I know you are, this idea of the marshmallow test. This has gotten a lot of coverage in our recent popular media. But what we've learned from that is that self-control really is a better predictor of adult success than either grades or IQ. And I think what's encouraging about this is that we can practice skills around this, and we can help, give our children additional work and skills in this area, just like we can with the idea of stress management. And working with teens, we know that they often feel a lot of increased pressure at this age. They may feel some pressure from friends or from peers, with busy schedules and with all the demands that are put on them at this age in adolescence, and as they're also looking towards their future and focusing on that. And so just like with impulse control and self-control, we can again teach skills around stress management. And these are things I'm not going to get into at great depth today, but things like self-talk, reframing a situation. Jennifer, you shared a great one with the benefits of deep breathing and mindful moments. But another one I really want to focus on is just the idea of connecting with others, for opening up and talking and sharing your thoughts and feelings and what's going on with yourself. Be that for us as parents with our children, giving them someone to talk to, be it a teacher, another trusted adult. But for us as parents to really be the one who our kids feel they can go to in times of stress. And, I think that can be hard as a mom, I find. The times they often want to talk and open up are the times when I'm less willing or ready or even available. So that's a bit of a challenge. But I don't know about for you, Jennifer, but what I find is there are certain times a day when actually my kids are a little more reliably apt to open up and to share and to talk. And those are times, one, I think, is at bedtime. I don't know about for you, but I don't know if they're in a more relaxed space, they're reflecting on their day, but that's the time and a space when I've had a little more success getting them to share and to open up. I think another time is actually in the car, as you'll see in this picture. And I've given that some thought too. I don't know if it's because there's no eye contact, so they're not feeling maybe as much pressure or stress. They're just in a more reflective space, or I don't know, the fact that they're kind of stuck there with me as I'm driving them from point A to point B. But regardless of when your child wants to share and to open up and is out to do that, I would just encourage us to remember to really take advantage of those moments and to be available when our kids take us there.
Mm-hmm. And it'll be different for each parent.
Right,
As you said, you have
right.
to learn where your sort of moments of taking advantage of connection are.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's developing those rituals of taking a walk together on Saturday
right.
morning.
Yeah.
And what I know of as being a parent of middle schoolers now is if you start early and develop this connection and sharing, hopefully it will pay off for them continuing to want to share with you.
That's right. They'll go back to that. They'll have that trust set up.
So we encourage you to just try things, like for example, try taking 3 deep breaths on your next car ride with your kids together or before you pick them up, to really just be present and available, especially if you're feeling that hectic pace of life, as we all do. I also think that I encourage parents to think about reflecting with questions that are curious around how the day has gone and being present for that. So there are great programs out there to try out with mindfulness if you'd like Headspace and Calm. So you can give it a try.
Yeah, I love Calm. That's my personal favorite.
Now that we're feeling calm and centered, Courtney, it's time to show up in relationship with the world and others. After all, we are hardwired to be social creatures. This social awareness builds on that, the previous skills, and it's really the ability to take perspective and empathize with others from diverse backgrounds and cultures. So to understand and see the similarities in us with friends and other families, but to also see difference and to embrace that. It's also about understanding social and ethical norms for behavior. Empathy really is the key word here, and we're going to zero in on it because it's really critical to get young people to want to get along well with others and to build the caring capacities we all want to see in children.
Jennifer, I think if you actually took SEL skills and boiled them down to one simple word, I think it would really be empathy. I think that really gets to the heart of the matter.
Empathy is arguably the most important skill we need. It's really the ability to sense others' emotions, and it's coupled with the ability to imagine what someone might be thinking or feeling, even if we haven't experienced that ourselves. Empathy is really feeling with people, and although we may have natural qualities that lend to care for each other, it's really more of a sophisticated set of skills that we all need to learn, and therefore we need to teach it and practice it. As our world becomes more centered on technology, with influences of social media in particular, there are theories out there about how this is influencing the generation of our children, the iGen, especially with our children. And Courtney and I are reading a book together right now by Michelle Borba titled Unselfie. It's about a decade worth of research that she puts forward in her book, but she really argues that in this social media dense world that our young children live in, we have become a selfie culture. And in that, our caring capacities have dipped and declined because there's been more focus on self-absorption through those selfie pictures that are out there in the world and through the likes that we get that reinforces our self-esteem in a really artificial way. Her concern is real and really shared with others, including us, and it's backed up with a lot of research.
It reminds me of a simple reminder I heard the other day I really liked, and it said, just remember to look up and not look down. I think we've all had the experience when you walk into a room or into a space and you see everyone seemingly looking at their phones and enthralled with what's going on there and what's going on there with the device in their hands. But just to remember to look up and to make eye contact so you can read emotions on others' faces.
Borba, that is, she argues that empathy is an advantage skill, really, and it is the strongest predictor in developing not only kindness and the pro-social behaviors, but really it's integral to our critical thinking skills, our moral courage. We know, Courtney, that these are the antidotes to bullying tendencies, to prejudice thoughts, to biases. So if we listen to Borba, this coveted quality can and must be taught by all of us, parents included. And it's not too late to start, which is reassuring.
It sure is.
I highly recommend her book because she gives concrete ideas about how to cultivate her 9 essential skills related to empathy. It's really essential to developing healthy and happy relationships with family and friends. And there's so many everyday moments, as we pointed out earlier, to teach into that empathy, to frame questions in a curious way, as I referenced earlier.
Yeah, but I
wonder what she might have been thinking in that situation. Or if your child brings home a difficult situation with a peer, boy, that's hard. I wonder how you were feeling. And I wonder how your friend might have felt in that moment too. Or when they're trying to be present with another child's difficult moment, I wonder how you can let your friend know that you're with her during this hard time and support her. It's really built by learning about others' perspectives. So to that way of thinking, we want to think about what books and movies and people we're offering our children to engage with in meaningful relationships.
That's such a good point.
From our neighbors to our friends, to outside of that, if we're engaged in community service or a larger way we can be connected. It's really at the heart of what it means to be human. And it's really the foundation for many kinds of things like loving well, for success. In some, empathy really fuels connection.
Yes, it does. You know, I love you mentioned the idea of building out our caring capacities. And I'm reminded of a recent speaker who I heard by the name of Richard Weisbleth. And he is out of Harvard and the Making Caring Common project. And his whole work is around promoting the idea of raising caring children. And he says and postulates that we as parents instead are often focused on the ideas of achievement and on happiness for our children at the expense of caring for others. And one thing I like about this that he says is that you can really focus on such simple things as your language with your kids. So let's say your child comes home from school and they, have just come from a birthday party or something. And instead of saying something like, oh, how was it? Did you have a great time? Did you have fun? That's focusing on their happiness. Or say they come home from school and they just had a math test. So how'd you do? What'd you get on the math test? Or say it's after a soccer game. How'd you do? How many goals did you score? That is focusing, of course, on their achievement and their performance. And so instead, we could ask questions like, gosh, what kind of teammate were you today? Or what did you do to help your teammates? Or what did you do to help take care of them today in your soccer game?
You're really talking about meaningful relationships. It's really at the heart of this relationship skill and being able to cultivate them and also to be able to work through hiccups in those relationships.
Right, yeah, that's right.
So in the younger years, we're practicing these emerging skills. It starts from the simple idea of taking turns, but as they get a little older, it's about being in social problem solving and recess playground. It's really trying to work through the difficulties, not just with the simple be kind or use your words, but what I see in first and second graders are these themes around jealousy or feeling the difficulty in those relationships. And we really want to be able to have them work through a difficulty, be able to talk to each other. If we skip over that part and we're not identifying that, we need to be able to get them to work through it so they know that they'll be able to get through that relationship, and that all relationships require that, and that will give them resiliency in that.
That's right. So what you're really referring to, Jennifer, is the next competency, and that's relationship skills. The way that's defined is the ability to establish and maintain healthy and rewarding relationships with diverse individuals and groups. You've mentioned that already today, and I love that. It's things like the ability to communicate clearly, to listen well, to cooperate with others, and to resist peer pressure. and to negotiate conflict, which you just were referring to. And you also spoke previously about the growing importance of kids' digital lives. I think that is so important in today's day and time. We're all seeing the impact of that and how it's really changing relationships and our skills in that area and how we communicate with others. Jennifer, I'm sure you are aware of a recent survey, research that I read, and that's what is the best predictor of a person's happiness and well-being. Well, what we know is that it actually comes back to a person's breadth and depth of real-life social connection.
It's a relationship.
Well, that's it. And I'm not talking about social media relationships. We're not talking about friends and likes on Facebook and other social media. We're talking about face-to-face friendships, time that you spend with another person that are done in the context of voice and tone and with facial expressions, all of those benefits that we know make relationships really so critical. And it makes me think, too, I'm reminded of our teachers in the morning and how I watch them greet our students. And they're there standing at their doors, and they're calling the kids by name, and they're asking about their weekends and how they are doing, and just really showing these kids that they're known. And so to me, it's really a way that our teachers are modeling these very relationship skills that we hope for in our own children. And you spoke to this, Jennifer, but it's really about giving kids a chance to work on relationship skills. Things like building friendships and resolving conflict, and then even facing age-appropriate pitfalls and setbacks that we know will happen in relationships that are inevitable. And ultimately, we actually want those things as parents because we know that that's what really develops grit and the idea of resiliency, as you mentioned. And it's really necessary for our children to eventually gain confidence in their own abilities as friends and as emotional and relational human beings.
Yes, as I referenced earlier, it really is being able to stick it out in a relationship. And sometimes they need adult help in that.
That's right.
I think you named it. I think as parents, sometimes we shy away from our children kind of making mistakes or we want it to be perfect. But if they know that relationships are authentic and they're built with a number of feelings that they can work through, then jealousy will be a normative part of a friendship. And that if they have healthy ways to adapt to that and to address it, they'll be able to bounce back and be able to manage keeping up with the friendship in a healthy way. So learning how to deal with those hurdles in relationships.
It's just like practicing any other skill, which we give students so much experience with at school on a daily basis. It's just like practicing your mathematics skills, things like multiplication and division, right?
Exactly. So we've covered several competencies. The last is responsible decision making. And this is really the ability to make constructive and respectful choices in our own personal behavior, as well as how we treat others with consideration, compassion. It's where all these skills that we've previously talked about have work in harmony and show up in the way we're a student, how we're at home, how we're a community and caring citizen in our school and wider communities. With the littles, we're talking about creating opportunities for gentle feedback and reflection. That's not shaming, but really encouraging them of the behaviors we want to see, because they're emerging and they need to grow those and develop those.
They need experience.
And so we need to remember as parents to be gentle and patient as this takes time. But if we do start early, we'll reap the benefits of nurturing this early on. We'll see them become caring citizens committed to things like social justice and positive problem solving in the wider world.
Yeah, it really is the next level of SEL skills, putting it into action in our communities and in our world, because our goal is really to raise children who want to contribute and who are socially responsible and feel an obligation to that end. But the question is, how do you engender that? That can be a challenge, but I also think it can also be a lot of fun as a parent, is to really help your kids connect with a passion or a cause that's important to them or to you all as a family. So you can pick one issue and brainstorm solutions and ideas and ways that you can get involved and to help out. It's really about, stretching our kids' boundaries and really expanding their comfort zone and having them step out of that comfort zone. So things like volunteering, visiting a homeless shelter, delivering meals, or even if you have any elderly individuals in your neighborhood, forming a relationship with that person, getting to know them and visiting them on a regular basis, helping our kids to ultimately see the world beyond themselves, and helping them really to grow comfort being around all types of people. And, I'm actually also, one thing I want to mention here is the idea of gratitude. I think we hear a lot about that in popular media now, and the importance of possibly setting up a gratitude practice at home. And that can be as simple as reflecting on your day and what, you were really grateful for and what stood out to you. I know in my own experience, I find that sometimes I have to push my kids to go beyond the simple answer of, I'm grateful for the sunshine, or I'm grateful for my friends. But we know this is a good opportunity for kids to really become aware of the bigger world out there and to then develop more empathy. I think ultimately what we're looking for is to raise compassionate leaders who will go out and feel like they want to make a difference and feel empowered to do so, and then hopefully even connect with a passion that may even serve them well into their own adulthood.
I love that you offered all those really concrete ideas. And I also feel reassured to know that you can start young, but you can also pick it up at any age where to have these practices and integrate them in. I think that we are, we've covered kind of the wheelhouse of social emotional skills.
That's right.
And how they build up and how they're separate and distinct, but how they complement one another and build up to that package of working harmoniously to be engaged in the world as a thoughtful person.
Yeah, I think you're right. So I think that actually brings us, Jennifer Morgan, to the end of our time today.
And that's right. So thank you both for offering such good advice and for helping us through these things. But we do have a couple of questions before we completely wrap up.
Great.
So let's start with the first one. What are some ways I can encourage or foster SEL skills in my kids at home?
Oh, gosh, that's a great question. That's so much of what we've covered today, and some things I think I'd like to go back and hit upon. Sometimes when my own children, this is Courtney Childers again, but when my own children come home and tell a story about their day, it's often information about their day and, what happened and what transpired. And one thing I try to think about doing and focusing on is instead having them tune into their own emotions. So instead of giving me the story and again, just kind of what happened, instead, well, how did that feel? And what was that like for you? And I wonder, as Jennifer mentioned earlier, the idea about, just having kids be curious, even through the phrasing, using a phrasing of, I wonder what that was like for the other person. I wonder how your teacher felt when that happened today. Helping them to actually walk in somebody else's shoes, which is really what empathy is. I also love too, I think you mentioned earlier, the idea about letting books help you with this. Get books involved, movies, incorporate a family movie night. Use those as great teaching tools at home.
Good advice, Courtney.
Thanks.
So Courtney, I think you guys have covered this a little bit, but another question that's come up, how can parents encourage EQ and empathy in their children?
That's a really good one. This is Jennifer speaking, and one I think about every day. We really have talked about how to boost your child's EQ, and I think we really emphasize starting with empathy. But I also just want to say that they're our children's strongest role models, in the way that we are in the world, and they are watching us. They are watching how we treat others, from the person in the grocery store to our teacher, our child's teacher, to our neighbor, to a stranger, and how they reflect on the world, both in our close community and how we engage in the larger room, helps them to understand that, including how we talk to them about current events that they may be curious about, how we may help them unpack that. To me, it also always starts with making sure our child's own emotional needs are met first. So you have to be able to count on parents and adults to provide that emotional support before they can provide it to others, like with empathy. So you really want to make sure that your own child's emotional needs are taken care of. And lastly, I would just say, you know, we shy away from this, but I'm a big believer in teaching your children how to cope with negative feelings. Oftentimes we want to shy away from those or skip over those or kiss them away
altogether
because they're uncomfortable. But I think if we do stay present in an anxious moment or a disappointment or a sad feeling, we are teaching them to be able to name it and also to manage it. And that's going to go much farther than being able to just manage it for them.
That's right, because we won't always be there, right? And really to tolerate it. You know, tolerating some of those negative emotions is part and parcel of life. It's something that's inevitable, really.
Right.
So another question that we got from our audience, you say it's best to start early with kids in these skills, but my kid's 14 and we didn't start early. So is it too late?
Gosh.
I hope that we created space for anybody to think about hopping in and jumping in at any point. I think as the parenting educator kind of research evolves, sometimes we don't always know exactly in the moment where our child is developmentally, but we can practice these with a 14-year-old for sure. And it starts, I would say, Courtney, hopefully you'll agree, is connecting with them, being present with them, using these everyday moments to reflect with them, to ask good questions, to be engaged in that conversation.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And I think we also made the point earlier today that even as adults, it's not too late. It's never too late. You know, that's one thing I love most about this field that I've been in for so many years now, and that's that the body of research continues to grow and we get to continue to benefit from that. And so many of these things that we've talked about today are just ideas that have become more, prevalent even in the last few years. And that's one thing I love, is thinking about how I can apply them both in my own personal life at home and with my own children and family, and then, of course, in my work at school and as a professional counselor. So to answer your question, the answer is no. The simple answer is it's never too late. That's the beauty of it. Take a deep breath, like we can all dive in at any point.
Certainly reassuring. All right, the final question we have today from our audience is, what is the one big thing I can do today with my 7-year-old to help at home?
Oh, wow.
Gosh.
That's a good one.
Just one.
Well, maybe three. We'll take 3.
Thank you for your generosity. Again, I think we're going to probably be re-highlighting some things we discussed today, which I hope is reassuring. You know, there's no magic silver bullet here, but actually it can be distilled down to pretty simple terms. For me, I think probably the most important thing would be modeling, and the modeling that we as adults and as parents do for our children. You know, we always hear this idea and we hear, oh, you know, but they really are watching you, and it's not so much what you say, but it's what you do. But the truth is in my experience, that's what I've really seen really matter. So modeling these ideas with our kids.
I would add to that and say, I think it's about being present and being available and being present. And sometimes, and I'm guilty of this, we want our children to be somewhere where they're not, somewhere different from where they are, in a struggle or in a competency or in a mastery of a developmental stage. And we need to meet them where they are. We need to meet them exactly where they are. And that really is true with emotion. We can't, you know, just like we highlighted before, if you skip over something, you miss an opportunity. So I would say to be present and to meet them exactly where they are.
That's right. I find when I'm not present, I often look back and go, oh, I really missed that when they were such and such age, or they were doing such and such. And the truth is, what I often remind myself is soak it up and just enjoy where I am at this stage with my kids, because it's not going to look the same in weeks and in days and in months from now.
And find the joy. Find the joy in everyday moments with your kiddos.
Yeah. Sometimes it's easier said than done. We know that there are all those challenging moments, but But again, yeah, I think that's a great reminder.
Well, Jennifer and Courtney, thank you so much for your time and your expertise today. And those of you that tuned in with us, we really appreciate your being part of our audience. Want to remind you that you will have access to the audio and to the slides through a link that we'll send to you by email. It will also have our contact information. If you have any follow-up questions, we're happy to respond to. So thank you so much for your time, and let us hear from you.
Thank you all for being with us.
Thank you.